You picked a tomato that looked perfect, right color, right size, and then you turned it over. Sunken, black, rotten on the bottom. That is blossom end rot, and it is not a disease, it is not bad luck, and spraying the plant will not stop it happening again. Stacey Murphy has been growing tomatoes commercially in Brooklyn for over a decade, and in the next 4 minutes, she is going to show you the 4 real reasons blossom end rot appears. Your calcium is missing, your soil pH is blocking it, you are over-fertilizing with nitrogen, or your watering is inconsistent. The fix is different for each one, and if you treat the wrong cause, nothing will change. Stick around to the end, because Stacey also shares the one thing most gardeners do with eggshells that completely wastes them, and the simple preparation step that actually makes them work. What you are about to watch is taken from one of Stacey's live Q&A sessions, where real growers send in their most pressing gardening problems, and Stacey works through them in real time. This question came from a grower dealing with blossom end rot on their tomatoes mid-season. Here is exactly what Stacey told them.
So this is from Wendy in Ontario, Canada. And this is a question I see a lot from gardeners. So she says, right now my tomatoes are rotting at the flower end long before they are ripe, and I don't know why or what to do about it. Also, my cherry tomatoes don't seem to be affected by this problem. It's been very hot and humid here with very little rain, so we have been watering them every day. Okay, so Wendy, what's going on with your tomatoes is some people consider it a disease, but it's kind of a deficiency issue. And so I'm guessing that this is what's going on, and this is what's called blossom end rot. And this can happen to tomatoes and to squash plants, actually. I've seen this on squash plants as well in very hot and arid climates where the soil isn't so great. So you'll notice on this tomato, and this particular one up front is red, but there's another one green sort of just behind it with another brown spot on the bottom. So this particular tomato with the red spot on bottom, the reason it's called tomato or blossom end rot is that it is basically the blossom on the bottom end rotting out. And what's going on is, I mentioned it's a deficiency. And so this is actually a calcium deficiency in those tomato plants. So there's a couple things in your question that lead me to believe that this is what it is and not something else. And so I'll tell you what those things are. And if you have a follow-up question, there's another call so you can follow up. So what leads me to believe it's this is that you said it's on the flower end. And so here you see at the bottom of this red fruit is like the tail end of the flower just about to fall off. So this is that blossom end rot that we're talking about. Now, if you had said that it was rotting from the side or from the top or from the plant stem or some other component, I might say that you had some other disease, some other kind of fungal disease. But in this case, because you said it's on the bottom end, that I believe it's this blossom end rot. So this is a calcium deficiency, which is what I said earlier. And so the question is, why do you have a calcium deficiency? And this could happen for multiple reasons. One is this happens very often with people growing in containers, and they don't necessarily put in very good potting mix, let's say, and they don't have the nutrients available to grow those tomatoes. Or the other possibility with that calcium deficiency is that people with containers, sometimes they over-fertilize, and sometimes if you have too much nitrogen that comes from an ammonia source, and I'm thinking of people who fertilize with a lot of chicken manure or rabbit manure, and that's something that a lot of people do with their tomatoes. Sometimes what happens is there is so much fertilizer that it alters the plant's ability to take up calcium. So that's another reason why you could have a calcium deficiency. So you might have calcium in the soil, but the plant's not taking it up. So that's one reason. Another reason is very common is that calcium is just not present, right? So I'm going to show you what to do about that in just a moment. Another reason a plant might not take calcium up is that the soil pH determines what nutrients are available to that plant. And so typically if soil is too acidic, the pH is too low, then the plant has a hard time taking up calcium. So that's something that you can do a little test, a little litmus test in your garden, and you can see if that's the case. And then sometimes what happens is with water fluctuations, with not enough water, and this might be your case, when the plant is getting not enough water, let's say it's going through drought conditions, the water is what helps to uptake nutrients into the plant. And so the calcium deficiency is that basically the water is not coming up the plant often enough to bring calcium. So I hope that makes sense. So that's the first couple questions to ask yourself. And so the way you can tell which one of these things are you? Is calcium present? Is your soil pH too low? Do you have too many water fluctuations? Is there too much fertilizer? You have to kind of figure out what your system is and which one is most likely to be the case. So if your soil pH is too low, simply adding calcium might not solve the problem because the plant still can't take up that calcium. If you have calcium in the soil and you're just underwatering, the extra water might be able to bring that calcium up the plant. And if you know that you've planted a lot of very rich ammonia-based nitrogen fertilizer like a chicken manure on your garden, then that you might know that that's the case, that it's too much fertilizer and that's binding up the calcium. So once you know which one you are, then it helps to determine what's going on. And in your case, I think what I would do, because you said I believe you said that there was some water. It's been hot and humid here with very little rain. So we've been watering them every day. So that's great. So it sounds like it might not be a water fluctuation issue. It might just be that you don't have enough calcium in your soil. So the way to add calcium seems pretty intuitive, but there's an extra little trick that'll help you get that calcium into the soil quickly. And so eggshells are a source of calcium. And here is the name of a video on YouTube. If you want to look up this video, I don't have the link shown on the screen, but how to prepare eggshells for use in the garden. And so this video, what I love about this person's video is that they talk about not only crushing the eggshells. So a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll take their eggshells, and you want to make sure that you sterilize those eggshells, because after you crack open an egg, there's all that kind of slimy inside parts of the egg. And when you eat that part of the egg, sometimes there's residue left on the inside of that eggshell. You want to rinse that out, and that sometimes can be home to pathogens. And so you want to make sure there's no pathogens that are going to go back into your garden. So what I would recommend doing is sterilizing those eggs, and you can put them in the oven about 170 degrees Fahrenheit. And I think he recommends 180 in this video. So at about 160 degrees Fahrenheit, pathogens die off. And so by cooking these, you can basically sterilizing them, you can kill off some of that bacteria. And then basically you want to crush it and pulverize it down to like a fine dust. And the bin, so there's the bin of eggshells, the big eggshells on the right-hand side of the screen. Just above that is a little dish with white dust in it. That's how finely he's grinding his eggshells, and he's grinding them using a coffee grinder. So what that does is it provides more surface area for that calcium to enter the plants. So really crushing them up. So you could, in theory, put this into your garden soil underneath your tomatoes before you plant them as a preventative measure. And what's going to happen is they're going to decompose over time, and that calcium will become available to your plants. In this video, what's cool is he shows a way to speed up the process of making calcium available in those crushed eggshells. So he shows here that eggshells are calcium carbonate, and so it's not pure calcium. So you've got to figure out a way to separate that calcium from that carbonate. And he offers the solution of 1-to-1 or 1-to-2 ratio of eggshell to vinegar, and he uses white vinegar. He mixes those things together, and there's a little chemical reaction of fizzing, and he lets that happen over time. And then at a certain point, what's happened is that the carbon is more available, the calcium is more available for putting directly into your garden soil. Let's say it's, middle of your tomato season, and you want to make sure that this gets resolved. So that's one way to get the calcium into your garden really quickly. Like I said, you can put the eggshells, just crush them really, really finely into dust and put them directly into the soil, and that's going to help in the longer term. And if you already have a tomato plant there and you don't have a way to get under the tomato plant with this calcium or with these eggshells, you can kind of dig a little trench in a circle around the tomato and put them in there, and they will kind of leach down. That calcium will leach into the soil, and the root systems will take it up as nutrients. Now, one final note about this. So sometimes if it's the beginning of the growing season, and you said you're in Ontario, Canada, so that would be, we're a little bit into the tomato season, should be, and it depends on where you are when your tomatoes are going to come in. But if it's your first couple tomatoes of the season, it's possible that those will have blossom end rot and that the plant will grow out of that. It'll actually start to metabolize that calcium. So if it's the beginning of the season, then it's possible that it's just your first couple tomatoes that are going to be lost to this. Now, the reason your cherry tomatoes might not be getting this is that different varieties are susceptible or have different susceptibility to blossom end rot. And in my experience, my cherry tomatoes never get this. Now, one note about this and something to look for, in the prevention and identification video that I have in the pest and disease management class, the 2-part class, so it's the first video, there are some slides that show different bacteria and fungal diseases of tomatoes. And so you want to make sure that this is what you have and that you don't have one of those. And this is a very telltale thing with tomatoes, because that brown spot, that black spot, is on the bottom of the tomato. If it's on the side of the tomato, then that could be blight, could be early blight, could be late blight, could be some other things as well. So that's what makes this such a telltale sign that this is a calcium deficiency.
On the eggshells, rinse them, bake them at 170 degrees to sterilize, then crush them as finely as possible before adding to your soil. The finer they are, the faster the calcium becomes available. But before you reach for the eggshells, go back to the 4 causes. Are you over-fertilizing with chicken or rabbit manure? Is your soil pH too low? Are you watering inconsistently? Or is the calcium simply not there? Match the fix to the cause. That is the only way to stop this happening again next season. Stacey answers questions like this every week from real growers in the field. Hit subscribe and you will never miss one. Or join our online community, gyove.org.